In the years before the Second World War, the Soviet Union embarked on one of the most ambitious armored programs in history. From the fertile imagination of its designers came tanks of every type, fast cavalry machines, infantry support tanks, and experimental monsters that tested the very limits of engineering. But among them, one stood out. A tank so heavily armored that in 1941, it seemed almost invincible. The Germans would give it a name filled with frustration and fear: the Steel Beast. The Soviets simply called it the KV-1. The KV series took its name from Kliment Voroshilov, a close ally of Stalin and one of the Soviet Union's top military commanders. In the late 1930s, Soviet doctrine emphasized the need for heavy breakthrough tanks, machines that could smash through enemy defenses, shrugging off artillery and machine gun fire while their guns tore apart strongpoints. This idea had roots in the First World War. But where the lumbering British and French tanks of 1917 had crawled at walking speed, Soviet designers wanted something better: speed, endurance, and firepower encased in armor no enemy could easily pierce. The design bureau at the Kirov factory in Leningrad produced several prototypes, including the hulking multi-turreted SMK and KV-100. These were enormous, complicated machines with 2 or 3 turrets each. But during the Winter War with Finland in 1939–40, experience showed that simpler was better. Multiple turrets added weight and complexity but not effectiveness. What the Red Army needed was a single turret tank with maximum armor and a powerful gun. The result was the KV-1. The KV-1 was unlike anything in service anywhere in the world in 1940. Where most tanks of the era carried armor 20 to 40 mm thick, the KV-1's plates ranged from 75 to 90 mm. Against this, the standard German 37 mm anti-tank gun was utterly useless. Even larger 50 mm pieces struggled. Only heavy artillery or the dreaded 88 mm anti-aircraft gun could reliably penetrate. Its armament was the 76.2 mm L11 gun, later upgraded to the F-32 and ZIS-5 versions. These weapons were capable of smashing enemy armor, concrete bunkers, and fortified positions. Machine guns in the hull and turret added defense against infantry. The KV-1's weight was its defining feature, over 45 tons, more than double the mass of many contemporary tanks. Yet it was powered by a 600 horsepower diesel engine, giving it a top speed of around 25 km per hour, slow compared to lighter vehicles, but impressive for such a giant. The crew of 5, commander, gunner, loader, driver, and radio operator, worked in cramped conditions inside a noisy, rattling beast of steel. But when in battle, they could feel a certain security: few enemy weapons could harm them. When Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa in June 1941, the Nazi army expected to slice through Soviet defenses with ease. German panzer divisions were armed with Panzer IIIs and IVs, backed by the trusty 37 mm door knocker anti-tank gun. These had torn apart French and British forces in earlier campaigns. But in the forests of Belarus and Ukraine, the Germans met the KV-1. Reports from the front were astonishing. Entire German units found themselves halted by a single Soviet heavy tank. Their shells bounced harmlessly off its armor. Anti-tank crews fired until their barrels glowed red, only to watch the KV-1 lumber on, its gun blasting bunkers and panzers alike. At Raseiniai in Lithuania, a single KV-1 held up elements of the German 6th Panzer Division for an entire day. Every attempt to destroy it failed, until the Germans brought up artillery and the feared 88 mm gun. Even then, the tank absorbed hit after hit before finally being silenced. To German soldiers used to easy victories, the KV-1 was a nightmare. It seemed invulnerable, a machine from another world. The KV-1 quickly earned a reputation for near-mythic battlefield stands. One famous account tells of a KV-1 commanded by Lieutenant Zinovy Kolobanov in August 1941. Near Krasnogvardsk, his tank concealed itself in an ambush position. When German armor advanced, Kolobanov opened fire. By the end of the battle, his crew claimed to have destroyed 22 German tanks in a single engagement, all without losing their own machine. Such stories spread rapidly. For Soviet propaganda, the KV-1 became a symbol of defiance in the dark summer of 1941. For German troops, it was a reminder that their vaunted Panzer divisions were not unstoppable. Yet the KV-1 was not perfect. Its massive weight was both a blessing and a curse. On good ground it could roll forward relentlessly, but in mud or snow its mobility suffered badly. Bridges often could not hold its bulk, forcing engineers to find fords or build crossings. Mechanical reliability was another issue. Soviet industry struggled to produce high-quality parts, and breakdowns were frequent. Crews often had to repair their tanks under fire, wrestling with engines and transmissions that groaned under the strain of such mass. Inside, the crew suffered from poor visibility and cramped space. The early Soviet doctrine of overloading the commander with duties, often acting as gunner as well, reduced effectiveness in combat. And as the war progressed, German weapons improved. By 1942 the Panzer IV carried a long-barreled 75mm gun that could penetrate a KV-1's armor. New weapons like the Pak-40 and, later, the fearsome Tiger tank shifted the balance. What had once been invulnerable was now vulnerable. The Soviets attempted to upgrade the KV-1. Variants like the KV-1E carried even more armor, while the KV-85 mounted an 85mm gun in an enlarged turret. But each improvement added more weight, worsening mobility and mechanical strain. By 1943, the Red Army recognized that the heavy tank concept needed a new direction. The IS series, named for Joseph Stalin, would replace the KV-1, carrying heavier guns and better armor on a more refined chassis. Even as newer tanks appeared, the KV-1 continued to serve as a backbone of Soviet armored forces in the crucial years of the war. Though later overshadowed by the legendary T-34 and the massive IS-2, the KV-1's contribution to the defense of the Soviet Union cannot be understated. In the long history of armored warfare, few machines have earned such a reputation. It was, and remains, Stalin's steel beast.